Hello everyone, welcome to tutorial 3. Actually, in this tutorial, we are going to cover the page layout in HTML and CSS. For this tutorial, we are going to cover section 3.1 and section 3.2. And then your exercise will also be tutorial 3.1 and tutorial 3.2. Some of the objectives of this chapter would be we are going to learn how to reset style sheet. We will also learn how to explore page layout design, use a block element, create a floating element, clear a floating layout, and prevent container collapse. We will also look at section 3.2, which will be learning how to use the grid-based layout, also how to format a grid, and also we are going to explore the CSS grid style. So in this week's lecture, basically we are going to actually talk about a chocolatier company. The owner of this company actually wanted us to create a new website for them and redesign their website. So they provide us with 3 pages from the website to start our work, and they have all the content, and they have compiled the necessary images and all the graphic that we might need. Also, they have the text and color styles as well. So they want us to complete this project by designing the page layout using the CSS layout properties. Basically, this is what the output would look like. So some of the things that we will discuss in this chapter, we are going to actually first talk about the display style. HTML basically are defined in 2 block elements. Block elements could be paragraphs or headings, and inline elements, and they could be text or inline images. The display style can define for any page element using this basically display colon type. So this is the syntax for it if you want to use the display style. So this type defines the display type. So let's look at some of the types that are available. And you can look at this figure here, and you can see the display value and then the appearance of it. If you don't want anything to show up, any display, so you can put none, prevent from displaying, and remove it from the render page. You could also have it as a block, table, inline, run-in, inherit, and list item, and so on. As I said, we can put the display to none so that the browser will not show that. So it will prevent the browser from displaying that element. And so you can just put the display property to none. So in this case, the element will still be part of the document structure, but it's not shown to the users. So that's what we can put to none. So let's look at how to create a reset styling sheet. We actually learned that our browser, they can actually apply its own style to our pages, unless those styles are superseded by our own style sheet. So many designers, they prefer to work with a clean slate and not have to deal with the browser style. So that we can do that by resetting style sheet that supersede the browser's default style. So you can use the reset style sheet that will supersede the browser's default style. So for this chocolatier website, we want to actually use the reset style sheet. The first style rule that we can apply in our sheet is display property, which actually shows all the HTML structural elements in our web pages as blocks. So that's why we are going to use the display type as block here. So then we're going to actually complete the reset style sheet by adding other style rules that set default padding, margins around commonly used pages, define some type of typographic properties, and basically remove underlying from hypertext links. And so that's what we have in here. The next thing that we are going to actually look at, we are going to explore page layout designs. Web page layouts, they fall into three different categories: fixed layout, fluid layout, and elastic layout. So let's explore each of these layouts. You might want to ask, why are we caring about all these different type of layouts? One thing that you have to know that when we are designing a web page, we are usually more concerned about the available screens width than the screen height. So different users, they might actually see our web pages in different type of screen. So we need to design a page that cope with a wide range of possible screen width, ranging from wide screen monitors with a width of 1680 pixels or more, down to mobile users, which the width could be 320 pixels or even less. So that's why this becomes more complicated. So we need to design a layout that will accommodate a wide range of screen resolutions and also browser configuration. So that's why we are going to learn about these different page layouts and advantages and disadvantages. So as I said, web page layout falls into three different categories: fixed, fluid, and elastic. A fixed layout is one in which the size of the page and the size of the page elements are basically fixed, usually using pixel as a unit of measurement. The page width might set as 960 pixels and the width of the company logo set to 780 pixels. So these widths are basically set regardless of the screen resolutions of the user's device. And therefore, it can result in the page not being able to fit in the browser's window if the device screen is not wide enough. So the fixed layout basically stays the same size regardless of screen resolution. On the other hand, we have another layout which is called fluid layout, which sets the width of the page element as a percentage of their available screen width. For instance, the width of the page body might be set to fill 90% of the screen, and the width of the company logo might set to fill 80% of that. Under this layout, the page resizes automatically to match the screen resolution of basically the user's device. So in fluid layouts, the layouts change with the screen resolution. So it's normally best to work with fluid layout that's more adaptable to range of screen resolutions. Elastic layout in which all the measurements are expressed in EM units and are based on the default font size that are being used in the page. If a users increase the font size, then the width, height, and location of all other page elements, including images, changes to match that. So in this case, there is an advantage for this because sizing is basically based on the font size and not on the screen resolution. So there is a problem if a user sets the default font size large enough, the page could extend beyond the boundaries of the browser's window. Another type of a design that we will talk more in tutorial 5 is responsive design, in which the layout and the design of the page changes in response to the device that's rendering it. The page will have one set of style for mobile devices, another one for tablets. We will discuss that more when we are talking about how to design for mobile devices, which will have the responsive design, and that's the new way that a lot of designers are doing it. So because the width is such an important part of the layout, we're going to talk about the width of the page body and elements within the page. So the width and height of an element are set using these type of properties. So you can actually use these syntax: width column value and height column value, where value is the width or the height using one of the CSS unit of measurement. Or also you can use percentage of width or height of parent element. So in this example, we are actually putting the web page width is 95%, and we are ranging it from 640 pixel till the maximum width 960 pixel. So you can put, if you don't want to put that, you can just put body width 95%. So you can use the percentage. You don't have to actually use the height value because most of the browsers automatically increase the height of an element to match its content. So that's why we mostly use the width. So in this example, we are actually displaying the logo image as a block statement. So we are displaying it as a block, and then we also put the width of the logo to 100% of the page body. Also, we can actually center a block element. So the block element can also be centered horizontally with their parent element by setting both the left and the right margin to auto. So we can actually modify this the style rule for the page body to actually center that block element. Now let's talk about centering an element vertically. That cannot be basically accomplished very easily, because when you are centering an element vertically, it's not easily accomplished because of the height of the parent element is usually determined by its content, which may not be a defined value. So one solution to display the parent element as a table cell with defined height and then set the vertical alignment property set to the middle. So there is an example that in the book that you can follow, that we are using the div element, and so we are for the heading Panacea chocolates, we are putting it in a div, which you could apply the style rule of the div, which will have the height, you are going to display as a table cell, and then the vertical alignment is middle. So using this style rule, you are actually centering the heading 1 vertically. So you are vertically centering the heading 1, this Panacea chocolate. So you are putting it into a div, and then you are going to put the display type as table cell. Now let's talk about floating page content. Floating an element takes it out of position and places it along the left or right side of its parent element. Basically, when as a default, when the content is displayed in the page, it will appear as the order that has in html5 as part of the normal document. You can look at page 183 and you can see the original layout, how it will be laid out on figure 3.9. So if we can actually use this syntax, the float property, the float and the position, where this position is none, the default. You can put it to left or right, and then that could actually move to you can have a float the object on the right margin, or you can have it on the left margin. So that's the option that you could have for this. So in here, this is the normal, the original layout, and then this one element is floated on the right margin, and subsequent pages content wrap around it. So if you want your layout to look like this, then you can actually use this. So you're going to display the link as a block, and then you're going to you're going to have it the display as a block, and then you're going to have the float as left. So if you want it to show up on the left side. And in here, so we are actually, the chocolatier, the owner, wants it to show up like this. So each hypertext link display as a block. So this is, shows as a block. And then the text alignment, it would be center. So you want this to be center in each block. We have another option, clearing a float. And sometimes you have a layout that you want an element to be displayed on a new row, clear of the previously floated object. In that way, if you look at page 187, you can see that you want this new element to show up in a new line. You don't want it to continue with the float. So you can put the clear column position, where the position could be left, right, or none, basically. So left would be display the element only when the left margin is clear of floating objects. Right would be display the element only when the right margin is clear of the floating object. Both display the element only when both margins are clear of the float. And then none display the element alongside of any floated object. If you don't put anything there, you don't have a clear, you don't have right or left or both. So this is basically the clear right. As you can see the example here. So that's why, you know, it's not going to be here. It's a new row that we have, and it's going to be, you put the clear right, so it's going to start from here, from the right. You can try with left and both to see what's going to happen in this. You are going to follow the tutorial, and basically in the tutorial you can just play around with this to see what's going to happen. So this is another example. So left column, so you are going to use the clear left. So this display the left column once the left margin is clear of the previously floated element, and then you have your float to the left. So this floats the left column on the left margin with a width of 33%. Again, in here you can see you're using the float left with 67%, and then in here you're going to use the display as a block, so the type will be block, and the width is 100%, and so on. So you can practice this with the tutorial on page 188, 189. So this is the example of basically what you are going to see the output. So the left column occupies 33% of the width of the page body, and the right column is going to be the 67% of the width. In this example, the horizontal navigation list with each image and label, they are being put as 25%. So this is 67%, and then each of these will be 25% of the list width. So this is basically 25% of the list width. So if the list width is 100%, you have 4 parts. So each of them is 25% of the list width. By default, browser measure the width using the content box model. In the content box model, which the width property only refers to the width of the element content, and only any padding or borders constitute adding a space. So additional space is going to be included in the padding or borders. But on the other hand, the border box model, the width property is based on the sum of the content, padding, and border spaces. So additional spaces can be taken up. The padding and border is substituted from the space given to the content. Let's look at this example. Maybe it's easier when you see it than when I talk about it. So this is the content box model, and this is the border box model. So as you can see here. So basically these two models, they have the same width, padding, and border values. But how they are interpreting it, it's different. So you can choose the layout model using the box sizing property. So the syntax would be box sizing type, where type is content box, and so it's the default. So basically, a lot of designers nowadays prefer to use the border box model in page layout, so that there's not going to be any confusion about the total width of each element. So this is more widely used, the border box. The next thing that we are going to talk about is working with container collapse. As we talked about, the floated element is taken out of the document flow, so there's no longer part of an element that contains it. Therefore, it's all the floating free of its container. When every element in the container is floated, there's no content left. So this is the case. This would be the case in here. As far as the browser is concerned, the container will be empty. So the container has no height, no background, no color, of nothing. So this will happen at this stage. We call it container collapse. So we call it a container collapse. So how do we work with container collapse? So in this case, you want this picture. So basically, you want in your layout to have the container expand to surrounding all of its floating content. So you want something like this. So what we would do, we use the after pseudo element to add a placeholder element after the footer. In this case, we are saying the footer is the part that's actually collapsing. So because if you look at the example in the book in page 197, the footer in the Panacea homepage is that there's no trailing element. So the footer is the last element in the page body. So one way to fix it, we are going to use this after pseudo element to add a placeholder element after the footer. So we have the container after, so instead of container, we can put footer after, and we use the clear boat, the clear property, which keeps this placeholder element from being inserted until both margins are clear of float. And then the element itself is a web table, but contains only an empty text string, so that no actual content is written on the web page. So this will be basically the you can use this syntax. So the container is the selector for the element containing floating objects. So this could be in this case, would be the footer. So you can just look at page 197 and do the tutorial on 196. So as we said, the clear property keeps the placeholder element from being inserted until both margins are clear of the float, and the element of itself is, as we said, is a web table and contains an empty text string. So that's why we have it displayed as a table, and it contains an empty text string. So this includes the material that you need to know for tutorial 3.1. So you can follow the tutorial for your basically exercise. You need to follow this tutorial until page 198. Okay, so we are going to start the second part now.